Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we've got something incredibly urgent to dive into, especially if you're operating a business in South Africa's economic heartland. We're completely breaking down the 2026 Employment Equity Director General reviews, and more specifically, we're looking at exactly what Gauteng employers absolutely need to know to survive this upcoming assessment cycle. So, if you're anywhere near HR, compliance, or executive leadership, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to what we're covering today.
So I want you to ask yourself honestly right now, is your business truly prepared for a compliance assessment? And I don't just mean having a dusty file sitting in a cabinet somewhere. The Department of Employment and Labor is seriously stepping up their enforcement. And this looming assessment cycle, it's shaping up to be the most rigorous one we've seen yet under the amended Employment Equity Act. Okay, let's dive into this. 2026. This isn't just another year on the calendar. This is the pivotal baseline year. For the very first time, the Department of Employment and Labor is actually going to actively measure your transformation against your 5-year targets. This is that make or break moment where theory absolutely has to meet practice, and where the department sets a genuine baseline to see if real, tangible transformation is happening in your workforce. Let's look at Section 1, the 2026 assessment cycle, or as we like to call it, the end of copy and paste compliance. That old era of treating employment equity like some quick annual paperwork exercise? Yeah, that is officially over. Let's look at the actual timeline you're up against. Reporting for the 2026 cycle officially opens up on September 1st, 2026, which happens to be when manual submissions begin too. Then by October 1st, those manual submissions close entirely. And finally, you've got until January 15th, 2027 for the online submissions. These dates are absolutely crucial because they mark the exact window where your business is going to be judged on genuine progress, not just your ability to hit submit on a form. And if you're wondering just how serious they are, take a look at what Dr. Nzaki Mamashela, the director of the department's Employment Equity Directorate, is saying. She's explicitly putting it out there that employers must be thorough in how they develop and implement these targets. Officials are openly warning us, They flagged major concerns over these invalid, repetitive copy and paste reports. They are actively hunting for objective, concrete evidence. Moving on to Section 2, inside a DG review. What is the department actually looking for? So what really happens when the department decides to peek behind the curtain of your operations? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the biggest trap employers fall right into. On one hand, we've got paper compliance, which is basically just having a plan filed away and faithfully submitting your annual forms. But on the other hand, we have practical implementation. That means having the actual recruitment, promotion, and disciplinary records that prove your plan is alive and breathing. A Director General review strictly tests that implementation side. They want substance, because reviewers are going to scrutinize a massive cross-section of your business. They're digging into your IE committee consultation minutes, they're comparing your internal workforce analyses directly against sectoral targets, and they're looking deep into your daily recruitment, promotion, and termination practices. What this ultimately means is that your day-to-day HR and industrial relations case files, like, say, a disciplinary termination, they have to align perfectly with your employment equity records. They literally cannot exist in isolated silos anymore. And look, if you're sitting there thinking you can just kind of wing this, you really need to hear this staggering number: 0. In an earlier round of reviews that focused on 72 JSE-listed companies, the department assessed the first 50. Out of those 50 incredibly well-resourced, publicly traded companies, 0 were found fully compliant. 0 recommendations were issued, and some were even referred directly for prosecution just because they didn't have a proper functioning EE plan in place. All right, Section 3, Gauteng's unique employer exposure, the high stakes in South Africa's economic hub. So why are businesses in Gauteng carrying such a disproportionate chunk of this review risk? Well, it's pretty simple. Gauteng is home to the largest concentration of designated employers in the entire country, from the shiny financial towers of Sandton all the way to the logistics corridors near OR Tambo and the industrial belts in Germiston, Boksburg, and Benoni. These areas feature incredibly diverse, heavily layered workforces. Because of that massive complexity and scale, Gauteng businesses are sitting square in the crosshairs on the department's current review activity. And it's really critical to understand how your company's size dictates that exposure. See, if you have under 150 employees, you only report every 2 years. But if you have 150 or more employees, which, let's be honest, covers a massive chunk of Gauteng's mid-size and large businesses, you have to report annually by the first working day of October.
And annual reporting means annual exposure to a DG review. You've got absolutely zero room to let your record-keeping slip.
Which brings us to Section 4, the high cost of failure, from administrative reviews all the way to court orders. Because you might be wondering, what actually happens if you get reviewed and they don't like what they see? Well, the escalation path is terrifyingly fast. Step 1, you get an unfavorable DG review and they issue recommendations. Step 2, if you don't act on those, it becomes an unresolved compliance order. Step 3, the Director General bypasses the pleasantries and applies directly to the labor court. And step 4, that compliance order becomes a legally binding labor court order. So what started as a simple administrative hiccup rapidly morphs into a full-blown legal nightmare.
So the crucial point is that the consequences here aren't just legal headaches. They are deeply, deeply commercial. Your sector-specific numerical targets are directly tied to your eligibility to tender for state contracts and public sector work. A failed DG review doesn't just mean a slap on the wrist or an annoying fine. It can literally block your business from winning lucrative contracts. It hits your bottom line directly and immediately. Okay, let's talk solutions. Section 5, preparing for the assessment. How to get ahead of that review notice.
We really don't want to just sit around waiting for a notice to arrive. So here's a highly practical preparation roadmap recommended directly by the experts at VCA Consulting. First, you need to reconcile your current EE plan against your actual, real-world HR outcomes. Second, verify that your EE committee minutes actually exist, that they're signed, and most importantly, that they can be retrieved instantly. Third, double-check that your internal numerical targets genuinely match up with your sectoral goals. And fourth, confirm your training records logically link right back to designated groups and your set of commitments.
Because trying to manage all this stuff in isolated silos, that's exactly how companies fail. And it's precisely how VCA Consulting tackles the problem. Since 1996, they've been supporting employers by providing truly integrated compliance support. They essentially merge your employment equity with your daily HR and IR, your BBBE, your payroll, and your skills development. Because at the end of the day, that is exactly how the department tests compliance. They look at a connected, holistic picture of your workforce decisions, not just a single form you fill out once a year. I really want to leave you with this stark reminder today. A plan that reads beautifully on paper, but has absolutely zero implementation evidence backing it up, is the exact pattern the department is hunting for right now. The evidence of your transformation has to exist continuously, every single day, throughout the year. You simply cannot just assemble it in a state of sheer panic in September when your report is suddenly due. Which leads us right to our final essential question for you to chew on. Does your workforce data tell one consistent, evidenced story? If you aren't completely sure if there's even a shadow of a doubt in your mind that your HR records might not perfectly align with your employment equity promises, it might be time to bring in specialists like VCA Consulting well before those 2026 DG reviews actually kick off. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay compliant and keep learning.